Okay, so we'll continue from this point onwards. The last thing that we have discussed about the box model, which how the elements are around. So the real content is here. They're around that you have padding, then we have a border at the margin. And then I think we discuss how to calculate the width of the element, right? And I said you will normally start with saying the total width of this is um, start with the margin and then the border, then the padding, and then you have a element width, right? Which is total into 450, right? That's what we said. But then again, I totally agree that some of you said the sizing one, usually they will fixed into, right now what we used is, how do you say, um, the default case. That's what we have discussed, right? So the default case would be, taking everything, right? But then you can change, right? Maybe we can look at this with some other, CSS styling uses. You have frameworks for CSS. Hopefully, I will talk about this. For example, when you want to style this, writing down CSS for each element like this takes time, and there are already available frameworks. We have Bootstrap, Tailwind. Those are like two, CSS frameworks you can use, which actually, have their own set of rules defined for each of these elements. And then when it comes to box modeling, then usually they fix the model. The reason for this is right now what we are using is we talk about everything. We take the everything, and then normally you can fix it to what we call the border box, what they call it. I'll come to that later, which is we can have the content, padding, and the border, right? Forgetting out the outside of this. So this is easier so that you can fix. And most of these frameworks that I have mentioned earlier, they have fixed the border box. So you can read about this. Right. That's something that I want to now highlight here. Okay. So my today's starting point, let's continue what we have discussed. So the next part we are going to look at is the text properties. So when you're actually having text, you can set the colors. So you can see I have given you like some of these color properties with the name, hash, hex value, and then use of RGB. At the same time, you can use text align property. So in this particular case, we can say align into center, which means we can make it the text center. Okay, previously you can use, for example, center tag. That is possible in HTML, but this is not normally recommended because you can change. Right? So similarly, we can say text align left, right? Justify meaning like you align both left and right. Okay. So that's text align property. Similarly, we have text decoration. So for example, let me give you some example for this. When we have links, I think we have discussed HTML links, right? So usually it's underlined. So whenever you specify a link, you have underlined, but that is called the decoration. So when you set the decoration to none, usually you can remove the underline from the links. That's one use case, right? Then text transform, meaning like when you want to change whatever the type, let's say you want to make it to uppercase, lowercase, capitalize. So in particular, for example, let's take a header, for example. And if you want to change every time the header into uppercase, so you can use that it here, right? So that's something you can use. So that's the text transform. Then fonts also another very important. Um, uh, for example, there are various different types of fonts we normally use. So for example, if you take headers, for example, usually you will see there are fixed set of like without any curvatures like this. These are called serifs. You can notice that in red color. So usually these fonts we call sans serif, meaning like no serifs. Sans serif means it's no serif. That means these small curvatures are not present. So this is preferred usually in headers, like when you look for a bigger font size. But when you say printed letters, usually serif fonts are preferred, right? So you can see the Times New Roman is a commonly we use in the documentation, which is a serif fonts, which you have these curvatures, which is usually we prefer for the smaller fonts, right? So that's normally, you don't have fixed rule like that, but usually that's something people generally use this. So when you take when you define a page, so you can specify what font family you are using. And then you can specify what fonts we are using. I mean, one issue might be like, for example, if you're using like custom fonts, not generally available, that might something that you have to be very, very careful, right? Um, Okay, right. So those are the things I think I want to highlight. Anything else? Okay. So under the CSS fonts, we can set with the font family property. And then, as I told you earlier, since sometimes um, some fonts might not supported with the browser, for example, right? So we list several fonts. So you can notice that um, uh, the exact font name that you need. So you can notice here in the example, we have Times New Roman. But if that first font is not available, then maybe the second one. Usually go from the generic one. And then finally, you can say it says serif font. So any serif, which is preferred here. So that's what we have specified in this particular case. Right. Okay. Then we have font style property. For example, we have normal fonts, italic fonts, oblique, right? And then you can specify font sizes. When you say font sizes, there are some measurements. I think if you go down to the last point, I have already uploaded this. So let me switch to the last point for the units. So if you go to the, sorry, it ended up sorry about that. I will switch to the last slide. And then let me share it again. Right. There are some measurements we will use. So in this particular case, you can notice that some of the units that we have used. For example, the first one is one of the units we have used relative to the current font size, right? So that's something that we normally see. So if you go back to where we have stopped, so that specified, going back to the font size, okay. So you can notice here, the first one we say 40 pixels, so it's absolute value. The second one is relative to the size you have, right? So 1 EM is the current font size. And usually we say the default size in 16 pixels. So if you want to relate this, the font size to the pixels, 1 EM, we can say it's 16 pixels, right? So you can use that to get that information. So if you want to have 40 pixels in this relative to the default font size, we have to divide by 16. That's how we get 2.5. Right. That's about the fonts. Okay, so let's apply what we have learned about the CSS fonts here. So what I have done is from the last time I have renamed into page 15 and the style sheets, so external V2, which I have provided you in the chat. So let me make some changes and let's see how it affects it, right? So for example, a few things that we have discussed. We said the font size, right? So starting from here, I can specify font size. And then we discussed like a couple of ideas. So this is the default one. I can refresh. You don't see any difference. Maybe a little bit larger would be better so you can notice how it actually affects this, right? Maybe, yeah. So I put 25 pixels. I told you like the default one is 16. So you can notice that it has actually changed the size of this. Maybe I'll put around like 20, which is slightly more than the default one. Okay, so you can notice the application of this. Second one is maybe we can say the font family. So in this particular case, let me put some font combinations. So I hope you are familiar with Arial, which is a common font you will see in the documents. And then this is sans serif. So you can notice here, you have a serif fonts here, right? So if I save this and refresh, you can notice how it has actually changed the font, right? And we discussed why we are putting like multiple fonts in case if it is not available, it goes to the second, and then the third one is very generic. Then we can also put the font style.
Sir,
Yes.
so can you explain font family again? Arial and after Helvetic, what's that mean, sir? That comma?
Okay. Yep. So let me quickly go back to the slides. So for example, when you are putting like multiple, so when you're putting a font, one problem we might have to face is maybe when you whatever the font you specify might not be available or might not be supported. Therefore, usually we specify multiple fonts when you're specifying font family. So in my example in the slide, you will see I list down like 3 fonts: Times New Roman, the exact font I needs, general font times, and serif is, I told you like we have different, generally we have serif fonts and the sans serif fonts. Okay, so we are specifying the particular fonts that we need and little bit generalized form of this times. And this is the most general form. So what happens when you have this, the browser tries to, have the text in this font, the first one. If it is not supported, it tries with the second one. Otherwise, it will go to the generic one. So the last one, make sure that, it will replace with some generic font. Is it clear now?
Okay, sir.
Okay, so that's why we put up here. So in my case, in the implementation, this is try to apply the Arial or Helvetica. Or otherwise, it's any generic sans serif fonts, which is without any, curvatures. You see the fonts are without any curvatures. And I told you like these fonts are quite preferred in very large fonts, right? Or when you want to display it, rather than reading it, right? Then the third one, font style. So for example, I can say font style. I'm going to say normal here, but if you want italics, for example, you can say italics, right? For example, let me first show this. Let me, refresh it. Nothing will happen. Okay. But then, for example, I can say italic. So you can see, you will get italic fonts. That's the font style. Then the next one is text decoration. That also you can use. Let me show you like what happens. I will first say the none. Okay, maybe I can say these are font style that we have discussed. We say text decoration. I can say none here. You don't see anything here because it's not apply anything here. But for example, if you want to like underline them, we can say underline, right? Oh, because it's applied for the element P, which is applied to the all the text here. Maybe I can do something like this instead of doing this. Maybe I will here text decoration. Okay, I'll switch it to here. Control C. We have centered one right here. So I put it here. And this one I'm putting normal. So you can see how the difference between the two. Yes. Now what happens here? No decorations. And this is normal. And that's the default actually. And then here I have used text decoration underline. So you can see in this one, it's underlined. Right. Next one, we can also specify text transform. Text transform. We can say none. Or else, okay, so here you don't see anything. You don't see anything, but let me put text transform will apply to the next one. Maybe I'll put uppercase. Then you can notice. So you can see the when you have apply P with the centered, so it's in uppercase. Last one, maybe I can specify alignment. We have discussed this earlier as well, but let me put it here. Text align, right? I will say set. Sorry, we'll say left. So that's the default. So no change of this one. One thing I actually done, it's a, although I have put up external, I didn't put it here. So maybe better I will put it here, right? It's okay to have it here, but let me um, apply it to B2 so that it's there. So I'm going to remove this everything from here. I hope it is okay for you, right? And then I'll apply that here. Sorry about that. So simply what I did is um, I switched the rules from inline to external. I told you the external one is the recommended practice. Right. Okay. The reason that actually I wanted to do this is right now we have applied everything here. Yes. Uh, and others will keep it. So here we have green, right? But then we have these ones are there which will apply. So hopefully I will save it, refresh, no change, right? So I will put only this one so that you have to make the change here, right? Just to summarize what I did, you can notice that I have used external CSS to change the the look of the paragraph style. I have changed the font size to 20 pixels, font family to Arial, font style italic, without next normal text decoration, without any text transformation, and aligning text to left. Okay, how many of you have finished up to this point? So that also can be done. Maybe I'll put it here. So I have body here. Maybe I can change the look and feel of H1. Right now we have H1. We say class center. So every H1 we can specify, let's have font family. Font family. I can put Times New Roman. Or I can say Times. Oh, sorry. This is what I have given you in the slides. Okay, we can specify font size as well. Let me put 28 pixels. Let me save, refresh. You can see the size has changed, right? And then font style. So maybe I can put, okay, oblique. You can notice what will happen here. So let me save it. Right, just observe, right? Slightly slanted like italics. Then what else? We can say text transform, maybe capitalize. You can notice how it changes to off, which is capitalized. Right, I think that's enough. We'll switch to the next one then. Right. We'll focus on the CSS links, which is we can apply CSS styles for when you creating links. We use anchor tag for this one. In links, we can define something called different states, which means like whether you have visited, whether you have clicked, whether you move the mouse over the link and so on. So the four states we can have a link, that is we call normal unvisited link. A visited, meaning like you have the user has clicked and visited the link. Over means like when the user mouse over the link, and then active when the user is actually clicking on it, right? So let's look at with a simple example for this one. Let's create a simple link, and then we'll change what happens to that particular link, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the same page that we have done. So I'm going here. So the currently we don't have anything here. So after the H1, I'm going to include a link, right? Before the paragraph. So I'm going to say href. Let's say we are visiting let's say we are going to visit in the Peradeni website. Uh, Let me say visit us slash, right? Okay. So let me save this, and let me refresh it. And then you can see this is normally how it look like. Right. Now, what happens? The colors, the underlines, and everything can be changed by applying CSS. So you can notice what we have given. So let me put that from here. So we are going to specify some colors. Maybe I will go down and add them here. So I'm going to say a link, and then we'll specify color as red, right? So let me see what happens. So I have saved it. We'll refresh it, and you can see it actually changes the colors to red. Right. Then once you visited, we'll say it will be green. So I will do later time. But let's move over and then we'll change the color, right? Um, so one thing is I will type everything, but I'm not going to click it, but I want to show you that visited, when you visited, we'll ask to change the color to green. Okay. Maybe I can show you that one as well. So going back to this one, refresh it, right? We saved it, right? Now I'm going to visit, click it, nothing will happen. When you click it, you don't see anything. So I visited the Paradenia website. Then I'll go back and you can see that it's in green, right? So that is the visited part. Okay, going back, when you mouse over it, we change the color to a hot pink. So let me show you that. Let me save. Now it is visited. Um, okay. Okay, you can notice now, right? The color change. Hope you can see, right? Finally, when you're selective, active, we say color is, let me save it. So going back to this, refresh, when you click it, you can notice blue color. I don't know whether you have noticed. Let me do one more time. So it's green color because it's already visited. So we can click it, and when I click it, it active, turn it to blue, and then switch to the switch to the website. Okay, so that's about the link part. Okay, so I'm going to explain the next part as well. So right now we have link, right? You have underline, so that we can change. How do you link? And even when you are visited, right? So I'm going to say text decoration is none. And let's see what happens. So you can see I'm grouping this, a link. I'm going to say text decoration. And I'll say none, right? And then what happens is you remove the underline part. Default is you have underline. And then the other two, that means when you move over the link, right? Then we say underline. So let's see how these two works. I'm going to open up this, refresh. I have saved. Okay, now you can see visitors without the underline. Because we have visited, it's green. Otherwise, it would show in red color. But as soon as when you go over it, you can see that it changes the color to pink with underline. And same as when you click it, you can notice it turn into blue with underline, and then, connect to the parent website. Okay, so I'll give you the code up to this one. Right, moving into the next. So when you click link and visited, we are changing the background to yellow. And when you mouse move over it, and when you click on it, we'll make it to light green, right? So I'm going to include it here as well. I'm specifying background color, which highlights, right? Sometimes you are highlighting this. Similarly, so let me say, refresh it. You can notice, right? The link is visible with this. When I going on over it, changes to color to light green with hot pink. When you click it, same, but blue with the underline, and you are switch it, right? Let me quickly copy paste again just to show you, like, if you have another link without visiting this. I'm having two links now. Let me refresh. You can see the color, right? Citas. Um, maybe something else. Right. Now you notice because the previous one is visited. So you have two links now. So this is in green color because it's visited. And this one we have not visited, but you can notice that how the colors are changing. Right. Maybe I will copy paste it again. Everything I have applied for the link. So if you have seen the buttons, you can use the anchor tag to create buttons as well. So you can see that in this particular case, this can make it look like a button by changing, adding, some padding as well. So you can notice compared to what we have done earlier. So this sets the background color to red color, and then color, text color to white with some padding, and aligning text to the middle without text decoration, right? And then it says the inline block, which means you remember that we have discussed this earlier. So let me now show you like how this works. So what I'm going to do is, right. So I'm changing these to two buttons. Let me see how it look like. So better with a new one just to see, because otherwise it will be confusing. So maybe I will have a new one. So in this particular case, we are trying experimenting how CSS link can be used as a link button. So that right now I have put a visitors link which connects to the Peradeniya website. Right now we put the background color and the white, and let me put padding now. We said 40 pixels and 25, which is specify top is 14, and then the the left is 25, down is 14. Again, the left is 25 pixels. So let me save and refresh. You can notice here we have 14, 14, 25, 25. So that's, we have put a padding. Now we'll align it. Nothing to show you here. So it looks centered, but we'll remove the underline so that it looks like a button. Right now you have underline. Right. So let me save it. Right. Now let me save. Okay. So we will shoot you with that. Okay. Then we say the last one, display inline block. Let me explain what this means. Right now you don't see any difference here, which includes both inline and block element level properties. I hope you remember inline means it can go with the other content in the same if you just use inline. But when you say block, um, when you say inline block, what happens? You can specify with height, margin, padding, and so on, right? Very similar to block elements, but you have a control over spacing. So that's why we got the inline block here. So now you can see it as a um, link button. Okay. Now let me share this with you. Right. Okay. Next one. So the next part, I'm going to talk about use of lists as well as the tables. So in this particular case, we will start with the list first. So let me put some list first. So I hope you remember how we put it. So in this particular case, I will put simple list after the button. Let me put. I hope you remember the use of list here. So we have unordered list, and then we end with unordered list. And each item we use list item. So for example, I will say coffee, tea, when you save it and then you refresh, now you should see a list here, right? So you can notice we have list here. Now, in this particular case, we can decide or make changes to this. You can make it a circle. So, for example, here I can specify how this should look like under the unordered list. I can say list style type, and then I can say circle. Right. So going back here, you can notice that it changes to circle. Or else you can say upper Roman. Right? So can change it the way you want. Or else maybe we can have a small image, right? So that we can have this. So for example, let me go back again. I can say, okay, we need a small square type shape. Maybe we can create put a small square shape. Can fill, select it. Right. Let's save this. So square purple PNG we put it. So let me see whether I can put this. So we say image, we say URL. Yes. So you can notice that how you may apply an image as the item markup. So similar to that, you can notice we can actually make some changes, how you apply the positioning. So you can see here we have a list style position. So you can see the points outside of this, or you can say whether you need inside of this. So depend on your requirement, you can put marker outside or the inside. Going back here, you can use list style type none to remove markers bullets. Maybe I can show you this. Going back here, so I can put, so if I just remove everything, so I'll cut this one. So without this, this is how usually we look at it. But let's put list style type none. You can see how it look like, but the spacing is still available. So around this, so therefore you can remove them by saying to set the margin to 0 and also the padding to 0. Right? So you can notice that then it starts with the left edge. Right? Some more, you can use list style property as a shorthand property where you can list out the style and then you can specify how you actually make it. So in this particular case, we are using square, and then the bullet is inside, and then we have specified image to be displayed. Right. So that's about the how you might handle the list in CSS. Next one, similarly, what we have learned about the tables. Putting up tables also, you can apply CSS. So let's see how we can apply those. So in this particular case, I'm going to have a very small table after this. So this is the list that we have. Right now, let me have the small table just to explain how we may use it. So I hope you remember how we implement the table. So in this case, we have 3 rows, right? So we have 3 rows. And then within that, TH, we have first name slash TH. It's a header. And then we have table data. Let me copy paste the same so I can save some time. So we have, right now, let me save. And here is how it looked like. So you can see the table. Now, without specifying the board information, I think we discussed you don't see the border around the table. So that can be specified. And then you can notice that when you're specifying the border, you have to specify the border around the table, header, as well as TD. So that's what you locate here. So I'm going to go to the external one. Then let me specify this. Right now, I will say table, th, it will apply to all 3 elements. And then we specify board information. The board size is 1 pixels. It's solid line, and the color is black color. So now when you specify this in the CSS, refresh it, you will see these borders. Now you see double borders because it's around the border. You will see if you want to like remove the borders, and if you want to have it as a just single border, you have to specify this. So I will say table, and then I will say border collapse. Right now you can see just one single border. So that's the first thing that we have done, setting up the border around this when you're specifying a table, and then collapsing just look like just single border. Right, now when you specify the table, you can specify the table width and the height, right? Which is something that you can set, you can change the way you look like. So in this particular case, demonstrate how you can specify when you present it as a percentage value, this will fit to the size of the browser window. 100% means it extends to fill the browser. So that part, let me show you. So here I will say after this, I will say width. Okay, 100%. So let's see how it look like. You can notice that it's filled the width of the browser. Let me resize. Okay, so you got the point, right? So that's something that you can do as a fixed. Or you can make it a fixed height, fixed length of the height. So let's fix the table header. That means only this part. So for that, I'm going to say th, right? And then you can specify Of course, you can put it in, percentage like 10%, for example, and you can refresh and see this. But then again, let's make it a fixed value. So we'll say 50 pixels. So previous one, usually we say that it's a relative, right? It's relative to the size. In this particular case, we have fixed. So depending on how you want to, handle your tables, you have to specify width and height appropriately. Right. Now, going with alignments, we can use text align, which we can set up the horizontal alignment, right? So we can, currently you can see it's centered, right? So for example, in my previous one, if you look at it, the text is centered. That's the default header. If you take header, for example, usually it's centered, but you can change. So if you want to change it, we say text line, and then we say left, which you can see its alignment has changed. Similarly, you can specify the vertical alignment. So if you want to say vertical alignment, then you have to say vertical align. Similar to the previous, let's say bottom. Ideally, you use top, bottom, or the middle. So I will say bottom. And then you can observe that it comes to the bottom. Right. So you have to specify whether you want align in the left, right, or the center. But then you can use vertical alignment, like top, bottom, and middle to align vertically. Right. The next one is when you might have observed that when you move the mouse over the tables, right? It might change the color of this, right? So that can be done by providing you the different color. So this is easier, and that's something that when you especially when you want to have it in a web page or other applications, that will be useful. So the currently, in my case, if you look at right now, nothing will happen here. Just it's more on nothing will happen. Nothing will be selected here. So we can specify this TR, and then uh, when you hover it going over the rows. So what we are specifying here, we will change the background color, right? So let's put this value with 5, F5, right? And now refresh, you can. Okay, now you can observe that you can select when you go over the TRs, you can notice how it actually selected this. Right. But if you want to set up the table, colors one after the other row. That means every other row, if you want to work with a different color, that is also possible, right? So even child will put it up a different color. So the code is TRNth child. And notice here. So it already have. So we don't have that many. Maybe I can change, add in the same rows multiple times just to observe how it, handle this. Okay, now I have 4 rows. Let me refresh so you can observe now. Every other table is highlighted, right? I think there are many others that you can do, but I think you got an idea like how this handles. Right, okay. So I think now we got an understanding of how do you set up the text, the links, the list, and then finally tables. The last one that we are going to discuss under CSS is how do you laying out, making a display, which is again very important. And let me start with the basics first, and then we'll look at like how the latest way of putting in the layout. Right, going back to display. First one is we need to identify what element supports blocks and inline. Remember, we said when you put up a header, ideally it will add a new line, right? And ideally takes a full width, right? So those are the things that first you need to understand. But when you have inline, then no new line, and then takes up the whatever the necessary width, and they can go along with other elements. So those are the first two things we need to understand. So there are many block level element: div, h1 to h6, paragraph, form, header, footer, section. Still are like some of the tags that you can use. They are known as block level elements. Similarly, if you take span, anchor, image, all these are considered as inline elements. Right. Now, by changing the property of CSS and JavaScript, we can actually hide the elements. We'll discuss this later on, like how JavaScript could be implemented with this. But for example, H1, you can hidden it, right? So there are two ways that we can do. One is we can say display none. The other one we can say visibility is hidden. The difference between these two is when you use hidden, it takes the space. Sorry, none. So it'll hide. But if you use visibility hidden, it shows the allocated space, right? Maybe quickly I can show you this with same H1. So we have head element here. You can notice University of Peradeniya. Let me change this. So I can say H1 dot hidden. And I can say display now. Right. Now here we have to say H1 plus right. So it applies, and in this particular case, you don't see there's no spaces, right? It just hidden. H1 is no longer appears. But now see, I'm going to change this to visibility hidden and observe what happens. Right. Something that I want to show you, like if you uh, remember what has happened earlier, when you use display none, it is hidden, but it will not allocate any space. But when you use visibility hidden, so what happens? It's hidden. The element is hidden, but it takes up the space. So depending on your requirement, you may have to switch between the two. You can use display none or visibility hidden. Right. Okay. Um, then, depending on your requirement, you can change the default value, whether it's a inline block or so whether it's inline or whether it's a block. Remember, when you use anchor, right? So normally we will put this as a inline element, right? And then uh, when you use li, we can say inline. So depending on you have a default value. So we have default is block in li, and then a it's usually inline. So in this particular case, you can notice that you can switch this. We have already done this. If you remember the earlier, I said inline block. Remember, I told you. So it shares the properties of the two, right? So that is something that you have to think of when you're using layout in this. Then the position of the element. So the position property we can use to say how do you position an element. There are a few ways that you can use the position it. You can say static, relative, fixed, absolute, and sticky, right? So when you use elements to position, you can use top, bottom, left, right properties. But first of all, you have to use the position property, right? So depending on the position value you use, the outcome will be slightly different, right? Now, usually when you say HTML, usually it uses a static, right? So that means if you put static, um, it won't change with the values that we have specified earlier, like top, bottom, left, and right. Right. So you can actually put the way you want, right? So you can say div element here, and with the class static, the position will be static, and then you specify some color information. Second, when you say a relative, uh, then its position based on it's a normal position, right? So for example, you can set top, right, bottom, left properties. So adjust the way to the normal position, right? For example, what we have put down here in relative one, we say position is relative. The left side, we have 30 pixels, right? And then you have a put up the border. So based on that, you have left, you have 30 pixel space. When you say position fixed, it's relative to the viewpoint, which means that it will always stay the same place. What I mean by this is, you might have noticed that when you scroll, it goes up, right? So for example, I'm going back to my page, right? Sorry. And then let's say we have a button, but okay, right now I can't, okay. So we have button, when you scroll, you can notice that it goes up. Observe this, and you can say fixed, and you can say position fix. The scrolling will not change. So might you may have noticed this in some places. you can make it a fix, right? So you can have a block which is fixed and then you don't change. So you can notice that position is fixed and make it to a bottom to the right side. So we have 0 and 0. And with this, we set up to 300 pixels with a border of 3 pixels. Right. Now, when you have like multiple elements, and based on that, we can actually make them to work. So for example, you have div element with the relative, position is relative to where it is. And then we specify width and the height. We have 400 and then we have 200. And the border is 3 pixels. Then we have absolute, right? Based on that, we will specify won't change, right? From the top, we have 80 pixels. From the right, we have 0. Width is 200 pixels. And we put a border is 3 pixels. Final one, we can also have a sticky. So based on the user scrolling position, so that means it can go from relative to the fixed depending on the scroll position. So it is position relative until the given offset position is met in the viewpoint that sticks in the place. Otherwise, it's fixed. So sticky one, you can position like this. The position is sticky, the top is 0, background color and the border. Right. Okay. I think we will stop at this point and we'll do some exercises on how do you laying out. But at that point, I will discuss in the next week. So there are many things have developed from position in this. And then, as I told you earlier, you can use a framework if you want to handle it nicely. So we will discuss various positioning strategies, use of display. Remember, whether we use inline or a block element, that is one way to do. We can use a box model, that is another one. And then the float and clear also used earlier. Relatively, it's been known as a legacy to use this. Then we have Flexbox, and then you have grid. The last point that I want to discuss is depending on the viewing device, we can make some changes. So that is again, we call responsive designs, which again, we will discuss in our next session. Right. With that said, we'll finish for today.